Hello, I'm MC Toon, the second worst rapper in the world. How is everybody doing on this day today? Tonight we have a second debate lined up. It is with Rayism 24B. And just a second, let me get him in here. All right, and he's audio only. So how you doing, Ray?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm great. It's been a good day. Got a lot done working from home today. So, and I got an air conditioner in my room here, so I'm not so cooking like I have been in the past. So
that's good.
It's hot and humid in Minnesota here. So, all right. Well, let me cover a couple things quick just before we get going. Just finished a debate an hour or so ago with Conspiracy Cats and myself and Gleam and the Plain Truth. If you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch that. It was pretty interesting. If this is your first time here, I'd love it if you subscribed, and if you like the video, click a thumbs up and tell me all about it in the comments. So with that, we're going to get into right into it here with Ray here. You don't mind if I call you Ray?
That's fine.
All right. Awesome. So Ray, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, and not necessarily like present any claims or anything, just whatever you want people to maybe know.
I have nothing to hide. My name is Ray Goodwin. I'm 57 years old. I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I worked about 27 years for the USDA. I was a surveyor, and I never realized while I was working that I was surveying what appears to be a flat Earth the whole time. And then I watched Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues, little documentary thing. He's added to it since. He left his number. I called him, and he wanted to do an interview. I did that, I think, back in 16, and then he called me back in 18 and wanted to do a follow-up interview, and I did that. And both of them were by phone, and I realized, and I apologized that I was not up to speed on the Skype or whatever, so we could see each other. But I got nothing to hide. But yeah, you don't need to use my username. It's just I used to drive race cars as a supplemental income to my USDA position, and the best ride I ever had was number 24B. So that's how I got my username.
I see. Okay. What kind of car was that?
I drove wing sprint cars, and I competed on a regional scale in the Midwest. I did run some one-off type like the Winter Nationals in Florida in February, but usually most in the Midwest.
Well, that's cool. I know a guy that races MG. He has an MGB that he races, and I was at his house, and there's an engine sitting on the ground there, and I'm like, what's that? And they're tiny. MG's little 4-cylinder, nothing engine. It's like you can pick it up yourself.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, when I saw the Tony Stewart Kevin Ward Jr. incident, I was a fan of Tony Stewart until that moment, and I actually called the Ward Jr. family in upstate New York because I caught something that, when the video of a whatever you want to call it, manslaughter is caught on tape, I caught something that everybody missed, even their legal team, and I informed them what they had missed, and they did win a lucrative out-of-court settlement for a wrongful death on that deal, for what it's worth, because those are the kind of cars I drove.
Okay. Somebody says, a guy named Hugh Jars says, you can't race MGs, they're never going for long enough. I had an MGB in high school myself. That's why I was interested. And I agree. I'd get 2 or 3 days before I had to do something to it. So, somebody's wondering, what kind of surveyor, is there a certification or something? What was the specific thing you did?
I was trained by the USDA to do the surveying they wanted and needed done. You start out of college, we had different departments, but mainly you're working with farmers to build conservation practices that help conserve soil. Basically, we surveyed things that got built that managed, that stored, sped up, slowed down, conveyed, took underground surface rainwater, terraces, waterways, diversions, farm ponds, grade stabilization structures, flood control structures, things that are made with earth and soil.
Okay. We have somebody saying, a guy named Crashes says he'd be interested in the evidence in the Ward incident. So maybe you and he
I would be happy to tell him at another time.
Yeah. Crashes, I'll get you
I would be more than happy to tell him.
His email address, and maybe you could even have him on or something. But I'll
go ahead and give it to him, because I will talk to him.
Yeah. All right, I'll do that. So, all right. So, is there a certification involved, or it's just trained by the USDA?
I was trained. No, I wasn't certified. Well, that's not really. We had area engineers that would, like one engineer for a portion of the state. Back when I worked, the state was divided into 7 different areas. Missouri has 113 counties. Eventually, if you have a college degree, you eventually are promoted up into a position called district conservationist. And I climbed the ladder pretty quickly. I was a district conservationist for many years in Daviess County, Missouri, and back in like 96 or 97, we led the state in production. We built 110 miles of terraces that year, about 75 acres of waterways, 100 ponds. There was 1/10 of a cent, half of a tenth of a cent sales tax that went to conservation that generated $19 million, and our one county out of 113, we took the lion's share at like 1.7 of the 13 million that year. So I had the largest staff. I had a fleet of vehicles, 9 vehicles, and I was the youngest person in the office as the supervisor at 29. Anyway, that wouldn't be right. I might see I was born in 60, whatever. Maybe make that 1998. But anyway, we had district. The state was divided into 7 areas, and there was an area engineer in each area, and he would evaluate you as far as your surveying ability, and you would get what they called an engineering job approval authority. So we independently state, and plus the state and federal government helped pay for some of these conservation practices. It was called cost share program. But we independently operated, and each technical person that did survey work and worked with the contractors that had the bulldozers and scrapers and track hoes. Our signature, you'd have an engineering job approval authority up to so much based on your ability as evaluated by an engineer, and then our signature was the same as his signature, unless we were doing a job that was over our engineering job approval authority, and then he would have to sign off on it. But that would only entail maybe 5%. The other 95%, we didn't need him unless we ran into a problem that required a geologist. If you run into bedrock, build on a core trench for a dam, something like that. But so I don't know if that's certification or not, but it's my signature was the same as okay.
Yeah,
that's the kind of certification we had.
Okay, so now when you did surveying, are you doing things on coordinates, right? No.
You mean GPS coordinates? No.
No.
We section, township, and range. We've located our jobs by legal description. The northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of the north half of section 27 range.
So how
it was legal description.
Okay, so how does that? So you never dealt with like the state plane systems?
No.
Okay.
No, and if you're talking about the datums and stuff, they've changed over the years, and each country has their own datum. It's just it's an imaginary average. That's how I understand it to be. No. If we needed to, any dam that we built, if it stored more than 5 acres of permanent pool area, or if the dam had over 25 feet of depth, then it had to be tied to elevation above sea level. The hazard class of the dam would go up, meaning if the dam would breach, there would be more of a chance of loss of life and property downstream. So when we were, and also it had to have a 5-to-1 front slope or riprap to counteract the wave action. When you get a pool of water that large, the waves start to become destructive and erosive.
So
go ahead.
If it's elevation data, do you mean by saying that, do you mean that is not then what you did, or that is what you did?
That's what we did. And when I say they had to be those jobs that were that big or higher or bigger, and we built lots of those, they had to be tied to elevation above sea level.
And how did you establish that?
Well, that's what most people in this mystery of the size, shape of the Earth don't know, is that for the last 100 years, the United States Department of Interior have set these benchmark monuments all over North America, and I'm talking tens of thousands of them. And like the county I worked in, Davies County, there were, I think, the locations of these things are kept at the records office of every county courthouse in the country. And if we needed to go off of a benchmark, the farmers knew where they were. They know their land. I seldom had to go look for one. They'd just take it to them because they knew where they were. But there's just a steel plate set in stone that's engraved, and it'll say something like USGS Geological Survey, the date it was set, and it'll have a big number on it, so many feet above sea level. So on those surveys, and sometimes we had to go quite a ways away from where the survey was. We would have to start and end our survey on those benchmarks right on top of it. That's where you set up the instrument, you go off the benchmark, you determine your height of instrument, and from that point you go to your area where you're going to survey this thing. You survey it. Sometimes several days later you come back down to the same benchmark.
So how would you get elevation off a benchmark?
It's written right. It's engraved on a steel plate.
But transfer that to somewhere else where you want to know the elevation of something else.
Like what?
Well, how did you if you know the elevation of a benchmark and you want to see the top of this hill, how did you get the elevation of the top of the hill?
You would carry the elevation up the hill. From that benchmark, you would just it's called making it. Anytime you relocate the transit, it's called making a turn. The foresight becomes a backside. You recalculate your HI, which is height of instrument, and you would just go up the hill carrying your elevation, depending on how tall your rod is. When I first started, we had heavy wooden rods that had a hinge in the middle that were 12 feet tall, and then they became lightweight fiberglass telescoping rods that were 24 feet tall. But the thing about it is, and whoever your audience is, I can't cover this. You call any, and I'm talking about any land survey company, and just ask them one question: do you close your circuits? And what that means is a land survey has to start and finish at the same place. It's called zeroing out. If you can't zero out or close within tolerance, your survey is invalid. It's worthless. Cease and desist. Everything comes to a stop because there's a mistake somewhere. And I've been on surveys where we've made 10, 12, 15. Hell, I was on a survey when I first started in Sullivan County, Missouri. We were building these flood control structures. They were ugly because the primary spillway was, it looked like this huge dam that was always half full because the primary spillway was so far down. But they were built not for recreation or fishing. They were built for flood control, and the idea was to store water up and then let it out at a slower rate. You could dam up the Mississippi River and run it through a straw if you had enough storage. And these those structures had to be tied to elevation above sea level. And I do remember in Sullivan County, Milan, Missouri, and this was really early when I was just out of college. Well, I was maybe a couple years out of college, but one of them, the closest benchmark was like 3 miles away, and we started on that benchmark, and we served, the benchmark was on Joe Farmer, and then we'd survey across Joe Farmer's fields, out Joe Farmer's gate, down the country road 3 miles, in Joe Rancher's gate, across Joe Rancher's fields, to the proposed center line of this flood control structure. It was called a PL 566 structure because it was on the ballot. It was voted on the flood control. Just the local people would benefit, and the local people were going to be taxed based on this. And we'd survey the structure. So it's 3 miles down a gravel road into another farm. We'd survey the dam and where the water would back up, so it's 3 miles there, 3 miles back, plus another mile or two surveying the temporary and permanent pool area. So you got 8 miles of supposedly surveying on a globe, and then we come back several days later and close our circuit, finish where we began on top of the same benchmark, USGS monument benchmark, and we would close within a tenth. Which we had to close within a tenth.
Which is a tenth of what?
A tenth of a foot. Survey rods
Okay.
are so that's 1.1 inches.
Okay.
So 3 miles there, 3 miles back, and another mile or two. Call it 8 miles, 7, 8 miles. There should have been 12 feet, vertical feet or more of error. And we closed within a tenth.
Why would there be 12 feet of error?
Well, if you recall, as far as I know, and since I become interested in this back in 2015, 16, of all the flat Earth debunked videos that I'm aware of, I think the most viewed, the most commented was the Discovery Channel segment with the late Dr. Stephen Hawking's narrating, where they had a lake that was about 6 miles across, a guy with a telescope that was level and had crosshairs, and 2 girls got in a helicopter, flew across the lake 6 miles across, and they landed and below the horizon.
Yeah, you couldn't see them. So here's my question then. Why would you expect that when you go from one point out and then come back, why would you expect there to be any error? Because you're traveling back over any curve or not curve. It's the same. You're undoing whatever you did, so you'd expect, no matter the shape of the Earth, you'd expect it to come back to zero.
No, I wouldn't. No, I really wouldn't.
Well, I certainly would. I think the math pretty much is going to agree with that, because if you go out and then come back, all of the curve that you go around on the way out, you're going to go around on the way back.
Only if you retrace every shot of a turn shot in the exact same place. Yeah, but when you survey a dam and you're surveying where the water's going to back up to, you don't retrace your steps.
Okay,
you go around the lake.
Okay, so can you explain the math why you think that going back a different way over a curve would net a different error if you're coming back to the same place over a curve?
You asked me could I explain the math?
Yes, please.
Is that we were?
Yeah.
Okay. If you obviously are familiar with the Discovery Channel that I'm referring to. Okay, let's just go back to that segment. The girls flew across the lake, and they landed, and the guy says, I don't see you. You went below the horizon. Now they get back in the helicopter, and the pilot lifts straight up, vertical, and when his altimeter said 24 feet, the helicopter was in the crosshairs, and he says, I see, I got you. How convenient, because a survey rod, unless they changed since I retired, is 24 feet tall. and 6 miles at 8 inches per mile squared is 24 feet of drop. Now,
did you
let me ask you this. When the girls landed, when the girls landed below the horizon, and he lost sight of them, when they landed, from their perspective, the girls, if they were looking back toward the guy, tell me, is the guy 24 feet higher, 24 feet lower, or the same elevation? Can you answer that? That's a legitimate question.
Yeah, the elevation is the same.
The elevation
if they're both on the water, then the elevation is the same.
No, not when you're a surveyor. Let's try this again. All surveys have a benchmark. Now, if they don't have to be tied to sea level, if they don't have to be tied to sea level, you set what they call a TBM, which is a temporary benchmark. A nail in a tree, a nail in a post, something that you don't think will be disturbed throughout the life of this practice, because a benchmark is only used if something were to go wrong, if something were to fail. You have an absolute, even if you're dead or retired, or anybody can go back, go off the benchmark if it hadn't been disturbed, and then go find out how much of what is needed where to bring this thing back to meet specifications. That's what they're used for. So this survey across the lake would also have to have a benchmark. Let's just say that his scope, his telescope, looked to be pretty low. He had to squat down to look through it. Let's say that directly below the telescope, it was a steel stake that's driven in the ground, and the telescope is 2 feet higher than that stake. That stake is our benchmark, and just for the hell of it, let's call that benchmark. And you assign elevations to benchmarks, and it's normally assigned elevation 100. So if there's a steel stake driven below his scope, the height of the scope, the HI, would be 102.0. The girls fly across, and instead of being in a helicopter, let's say they're just holding a survey rod, and with his scope, he reads 24.0 on the survey rod. So you go 102 minus 24, which is what, 78. So the elevation of the girls, based on our survey, from the height of instrument, 102 minus 24, is that what is that? 78, is that correct?
I'm not. I wasn't following the numbers, so.
Okay, well, you asked me to try to explain this by the math.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's what. When the girls are when they land across, if they were holding a survey rod rather than in a helicopter, the guy would be reading 24.0. So 102 minus. I'm terrible at math. I used to be great at it, but what's 102 minus 24?
102 minus 24?
Yeah.
That's going to be 88.
I'm sorry, I said 70. 88.
No, sorry.
That's the elevation.
78, sorry.
Okay, I was right. 78. If this was a regular land survey and we had a temporary benchmark, a stake driven right below that low telescope, the stake is 100. The height of the instrument is 102. The girls fly across. They're holding a survey rod. A survey rod is 24 feet tall, and he is reading 24.0 on the crosshair. On a survey, 102 minus 24 is elevation 78. So when I said, from the girl's perspective, looking back at the guy, you said they were the same elevation. No, they are not. Not with the survey equipment we use. The guy is 24 feet higher than the girls. Now, let's say it's wintertime and that lake is frozen, and you can walk across it. Like I said, a turn is when you relocate the instrument. He picks up his scope, he walks across the frozen lake to where the girls are standing with a 24-foot tall rod. he resets up his scope that's more comfortable. He can stand and look through it. He sets his scope up at 5 feet high. So foresight becomes a backside. You recalculate your HI. 78 plus 5 is 83. Your height of instrument, based on that stake where we started, is now 83. The girls are standing there. You reread the scope, or reread their what you were reading 24. Now you're reading 5. So your height of instrument is now 83. Now, give me the shots across that frozen lake that's going to bring you back to close your circuit and zero out on 100. Impossible. Impossible.
Yeah, I don't think so at all.
What I'm saying. Okay, give me the shots. You're at 85. You're at 83. Your height of instrument is 83. The girls are there, and you're going to send them back walking across the frozen lake. Give me the shots you need to get back to 100.
Yeah. So
you're at 83.
Are you doing one shot across 6 miles?
That's what the guy did.
Yeah. Now,
but he used a telescope. I never.
Yeah.
I called. There's a place that specializes in this type of equipment in Wichita, Kansas. They did not have a telescope that had crosshairs that was capable of reading something from 6 miles across. So whoever did the Discovery Channel show, that was a special tool. Right now, when I retired, we used Leitz self-leveling transits. They were good. They were tough. They got bounced around in trucks. They got checked every year. If you had an office that had 10 or 12 of them, there might be one that needed to be sent back.
It doesn't matter.
Year.
Let's not talk about those details.
Well, I'm just saying. The one shot for 6 miles, I couldn't find it. I called a specialty place. I couldn't find a tool that could do that. When I retired, we used Leitz self-leveling. They were good. You could read. They were good for a quarter mile. Today, right now, Topcon produces one that claims to be reliable to a half a mile.
Okay.
2,640 feet.
So, did you apply the surveying methods required for geodetic surveying in this? Or are you just doing planar surveying?
I'm doing planar surveys.
Okay.
The planar survey manuals, everyone I've read, not necessarily manuals, but just guide sheets, bullet point guidelines from any authority on the industry. They all say the same thing, that anything under 10 miles you're to use planar surveyor. Well, hell, 10 miles you got that 67 feet of vertical air. I mean, it's ridiculous. Basically, what they're doing is in the industry I worked, it's just the curve of Earth would have to be accounted for with pretty much any survey, not just anything over 10 miles. By saying that, that's pretty much every survey. And Jesse Keselowski.
So all right, let's not ramble on to different topics here. So you're saying
Jesse Keselowski is a geodetic surveyor.
Yes,
I'm not rambling on. Jesse Keselowski challenged me to a debate, and then he reneged. He reneged the moment I said USGS survey, USGS benchmark monuments. The moment I said that term, he reneged.
Yeah.
I have yet to see a geodetic survey demonstrated, but I did catch him faking the Bedford level experiment on Little Tenza Bayou in Louisiana. I did catch him on that, and I gave him all the support documentation. I did.
How did he fake? What did he fake there?
He went on the Little Tenza Bayou. Bayous are supposed, you think of bayous, they're just level. I found the location where he did his survey. There were overpasses like every mile. There was overpasses over this bayou, Little Tenza Bayou, and then he set up at night. He hung lanterns off each overpass that glowed at night that were exactly the same height above the surface of the water. And he waited till nighttime. He got his his scope out and leveled it, and with every hanging lantern in succession, they went down. He says he called it the money shot. There's your money shot that the Earth has curvature, because each lantern was going down in succession. And I caught him. I found out where he did his experiment, recreating the Bedford level, and I used first I used Louisiana Fish and Wildlife reports. It was just one line on a big sheet of every stream or whatever in Louisiana, and Little Tensa was listed there. And Louisiana Fish and Wildlife, they monitor the discharge of streams, and they use it in cubic feet per second. Little Tensa was on this list, and the key word is discharge. It discharges so many cubic feet per second. Plus, I found where he did his experiment on topo maps. I sent him the topo maps, and Little Tensa, where he did the experiment, had about 4 feet of grade per mile. Now that's damn near level to the naked eye.
On the water, the water is sloped.
The water, yeah, discharge. The Bedford level experiment must be conducted on impounded, still, non-flowing water. Little Tensa has discharge, and it's on a state government report. In cubic feet per second is the unit of measure they.
So you're saying the topographic map shows that the water level across this drops?
No, the topographic
or stays
maps
consistent.
are lines of elevation above sea level, and each line is either 4 or 5 feet. And if you go on the bank of the Little Tensa, it had a 4 or 5. It had if memory serves, I think it had 4 feet of fall per mile. So he was conducting this experiment on a body of water that flowed. It had grade. So when the glowing lanterns hanging off each overpass would in succession would get lower. That's not the curve of the Earth. That's the grade of the stream. That's the grade of the stream. And I caught him on that, and then he banned me.
So, all right. So I happened to have emailed with Jesse a couple times through these last couple days, and
okay.
he accepted your challenge, but you declined. He says
no, he didn't.
And he gave me a link, which I'll put in the chat here.
I have my email where I accepted it.
So
I had my email where I accepted it.
Okay.
I have yet to see Jesse Kozlowski. I mean, if I had the tech savvy, I could show you. Jesse's, last time I looked, he had 110 or 20 videos, and I haven't watched them all, but I had yet to see him ply his trade. How do you conduct a geodetic survey? You could come to my home, and I could get a transit, and I could show you exactly what I did, how I did it, and what would then take that data, go to an AutoCAD, and plot it up, put it on paper to scale, and from that do the designs, hand it to the contractors, have a site showing, low bid gets the contract. I can do all that, and on tape, no problem, how I plied my trade. And I have yet to see Jesse Kozlowski even demonstrate a geodetic survey. So I would disagree. I did accept his challenge, and it never came about. And I know when I mentioned USGS benchmarks, his attitude changed. I mean, if you want to get on, what happened here? You left my screen. If you want to get on, just go to just search USGS benchmarks and go to images. About 3 rows down, you'll see a benchmark that has a GPS locator on top of the benchmark. The benchmark was set in 1962 or 67, sometime like, and the coordinates and the elevation from the GPS receiver is identical. This thing was set before they had handheld calculators. This is 2 guys out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm saying that it cannot. if you look up USGS benchmarks on a Google search, there'll be a steel plate with a GPS receiver.
Yep.
And I think it was set in the 60s. Anyway, it's accurate. The GPS receiver and the benchmark, engraved benchmark, says, I don't know, 2,000 some feet above sea level, and it's to the nuts accurate.
Why is that? Why is that a problem? That sounds like they did
a
great job
because
at their trade.
Well, why is it a problem? Because in the 60s, that was before a Texas Instrument handheld calculator. So to set that benchmark accurately in the 60s, and there's one that's even back. Did you find it? Yeah, there it is. That's the one. That's the one.
1964. Okay. Yeah, they did a great
1964.
job.
64. So I was 2 years old. No, there were no handheld calculators. And look, the GPS receiver, it is identical to the elevation above sea level. So how the hell they set that accurately in 1964? Well, I'll tell you how.
Okay.
I'll tell you how.
Let's hear
it. They carried elevation. That survey began with a rod man who had wet feet standing in the ocean. And they carried that wherever that's at. They carried that elevation all the way across the country, and they set it based on sea level. To set it right on a globe, they would have had to determine that on a globe that the sea would have been whatever it says, 2,753 feet above. They would have had to determine in 1964. They would have had to figure out that on a globe the sea would have been 2,753 feet directly beneath their feet on a globe.
Why is that?
Do that?
Why is that hard to do? There's techniques to do that.
There is. In 64, you would have to go in a 360.
There were in the 1800s.
You'd have to go in a 360-degree circle around that steel plate. I mean, not just 360 degrees, every second and every minute between those degrees, and determine how far away from the sea you are in that direction, all the way around that thing.
So
for it
I think
figure out.
I think there's maybe different techniques to do that, but you don't know what they are. It sounds like geodetic surveyors have geodetic surveyors, and I don't know the details, but I've read what I can. I understand the math. They don't just start at one point and then figure out where the sea level is. They start, like you said, with wet feet. They get the position at one spot, and then there's techniques using the radius of the Earth to get different elevations as they travel across. There's techniques to do that. Just because you don't know what they are doesn't mean that you need to invent however you might want to do it, right? There's other ways to do it.
Well, I don't know in 1964 how you could have done it without knowing how far you are away from the sea in every direction off of 360 in each degree around the circle. You would have to know how far you are away from the sea to then determine what the sea would be directly beneath your feet.
I think,
it's
like I said, there's other
techniques
than what you just described. Absolutely,
there's other I'm not aware of them. Have I seen them demonstrated.
And I don't question that you don't know these things, but there are huge books on geodetic surveying that you've not looked at. So saying that you don't know how to do it, that's fine. But there's techniques, and if you read those books, then you would know, right? Or took the classes like different people do, right? There's ways to know this. So I don't know why that seems to be such a challenge. It's there's ways to do it on a spherical surface, and they use them. So
if you look, in those first few rows, you'll find one from 1913 that's set on top of White Mountain in Eno County, California. It's 14,242 feet above sea level, I think. And if you look up Eno County, if you go back to the benchmarks on the images, there'll be one from 1913. And I did some research on that one. Can you go back to the images of benchmarks?
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot here. I'm not finding the 1913. I'll add 1913.
Okay. It's a brass plate. Anyway, It was.
All right. So here, so
it's
so
brass-
far,
it's
so
brass
far
colored.
you've
Anyway, it's on.
yeah, you've
It's
said
14,242 feet above sea level. It's in Inyo County, California. Inyo County is larger than Rhode Island, Delaware, Connecticut, and Hawaii combined. The population today in Inyo County, California, is 18,039 people. In 1913, the population was estimated to be less than 3,000. You're in the middle of Death Valley. Two guys with a wheelbarrow and a manual transit set this benchmark in 1913 accurately with a transit that was only capable of seeing 400 feet.
they didn't
You
use.
look at a
They wouldn't have been
1913
using just. They didn't use the same instruments as you used. They maybe had some other instruments at their disposal, right?
Maybe a theodolite, but they don't help you. That wouldn't help you. I don't think.
Why would a theodolite not help you?
Well,
So I have here the Transcontinental Triangulation and the American Arc of the Parallel book, published in 1900, right?
Yeah.
And this book details how they surveyed across the entire United States on the 39th parallel, from water to water, wet feet to wet feet, as you said. They used theodolites,
they used theodolites to determine angles, but they weren't taking readings with those angle shots. And to determine elevation, you've got to have a hard reading to the hundredth.
Sure. And
2 places right up the decimal.
They have
all it does.
they have accuracy here in better than 1 arc second.
Of the angle. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that's what you're
But
talking about, right?
But that's not a reading. You can't take that arc second angle and whatever you're looking at and place an elevation of that.
Why not?
It's not the same. Because everything is based on a transit that's got a bubble that's leveled. That's how.
But hold on, you are unaware of these techniques, and you're now telling me what the techniques they are that they use?
I've had a guy from Australia. He tried to use this theodolite, and I said, "Well, what?" Okay, he had an arc second angle, and he said, all I said was, "What's the elevation on top of that mountain you're pointing at?" He couldn't give it to me. He could give me the angle from where he was at, and he could give me an estimate, but it's not the same as a hard reading. If a transit could only read 400 feet in 1913, and this geodetic surveying you're talking about, those weren't readings, hard readings with a survey rod. They were angles, but you can't assign an elevation on an angle.
Why not? Why can you not assign an elevation?
Because you're not on the level.
You can measure your zenith angle, and then if you know how far it is, you can use geometry.
And it's still an estimate. It is not an actual reading. It's not an actual reading. And something else is, toward the end of my career, they had us walking through fields with an antenna, GPS backpack with an antenna sticking up, and GPS, at least when I retired in '08, and I retired at age 46, that's another story. I blew the whistle on USDA corruption, and I got an early out. I got a lucrative settlement because I was right. I was a whistleblower on corruption, but I'm 57 years old now, and I've been retired 11 years. But I only worked till I was 46, and back at 46 years of age, they had us tried GPS surveys, walking through fields with an antenna on our back, and it's not the same as a hard reading using a transit with you couldn't build anything. The surveys, we wasted 2 years dicking around with this, and
okay, that's kind of immaterial.
They ended up giving up. They threw them all away. They were useless. It's got to be a hard reading to hand construction papers to a contractor with a bulldozer and say, build this to these specs and these elevations. GPS was useless.
So
'Cause
how do you imagine that they got that 2,700 foot accurate?
They started at the sea and they carried the elevation to somewhere. They set a monument, and then they went off that monument, going on uphill, across North America, and they set all these damn monuments. And it's based on I'm of the opinion that the sea is the same elevation all the way around every continent and island nation.
Well, of course the sea is the same elevation. There's no question about that. I mean, the Atlantic and Pacific are slightly different, but elevation is different. On the surface of a curve, you'd expect the water to be the same elevation. On the surface of a flat plane, you'd expect the water to be the same elevation. So same elevation, flat or curved, doesn't say anything, right? It's whether or not there's a curve that you can measure. So did you ever measure a flatness, measure something that could only work if the Earth were flat?
Everything we ever did could only work if the Earth was flat, because the closer, the older, the more I went through my career, the farms kept getting smaller, to the point they called them ranchettes. And everybody had their 20-acre ranchette, and they wanted a 10-acre lake and build their trophy house, and things got tight. You build a lake, and you can't back water across the property line on a road right away or submerge a underground utility line. Things got tight. And if we were on a globe, some of these practices we'd had lawsuits, we'd had tort claims.
Can you quantify that, or is it just something you're going to say?
Sure. Like a terrace system is a series of little humps across the crop field to reduce the length of slope and reduce erosion. It's not uncommon to have a terrace that was 2,000 feet long.
Okay.
Well, 2,000 feet long on a globe, the last, I don't know, 200-300 feet, the damn thing would flow backwards, or not, would have reverse grade. If we handed the construction plans to the contractor.
So hold on, 2,000 feet. That's less than half a mile.
Right.
Okay, and so how much curve would there be on the globe?
Okay, let's see. On a half mile, I sent you the math. Hang on, let me go back. I do have that reference. Let's see. The math I sent you the other day, it was to Wolfie, the pilot. I just forwarded it to you. Hang on. Here it is. Okay, let's see. Using a TopCon, in 2020, look it up, go to their website. Their TopCon's best transit, reliable, they claim to a half a mile. Half a mile has 1.67 inches of drop, 1.67 inches of drop in 2,640 feet on a globe of given size and shape. So, a 2,000 foot long terrace, you'd have, the globe would be a little over an inch of drop in that terrace. And a terrace has positive grade. It either flows to an underground outlet riser or it flows to a waterway.
So what's the margin of error on building, like when you build a dirt terrace or whatever the terrace is made out of?
In all honesty, there are some errors, and the terrace channels maybe terraces aren't a good example of a practice that would malfunction. But if there are some errors, they usually silt in and fix themselves, to be honest.
Okay.
But let's see, what would be another? But I mean, an inch. If you were to the nuts and a guy wanted to build a pond as big as he could fit into his 20-acre ranchette, and he wanted as much water, and it was back in water half mile, which is common, and you could an inch could back water a little bit across his property line or across a road right away, and you got a lawsuit on your hands. I worked 27 years, and we never had any lawsuits. And I'm just saying, if we were really surveying on a globe, it would have messed up some things.
So I asked for I asked for example of how much the margin of error would be, and 1.7 inches is what you cited here over 2,000 feet.
1.67 on a half mile.
Yeah, and so and the margin of error when you're building it, is probably, I don't know, if they're using bulldozers, it's certainly going to be more than 1.7 inches or 1.67 inches.
You're right.
So,
Yeah,
all right, so I need more than just
right.
like conjecture and stuff. I mean, like real, like you
Okay.
measured and you know for sure that the deviation from true level was 0 over 3, 4, 5 miles or something like that, right?
Right.
Now,
all I can say to your viewers, if you want, I can tell you, you can tell people something, I can tell people something, but it works better if they can tell themselves. So I'll tell your viewers how they can find out for themselves. Wherever you're located, find a public lake that backs water at least a half a mile. Find a public lake. Wait to a July still hot summer day where the water is like a mirror. Go rent you a TopCon a laser level. Set it up on the dam. Then calibrate the receiver on the rod to the water directly in front of you that's on the dam. Calibrate the water to the receiver on the rod. Walk or row your ass a half a mile upstream and take a shot. Beep, 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 beep. When you beep out, if you beep out on the surface of the water, the earth is flat. If you beep out 1.67 inches above the water, earth is a globe. So your viewers, don't let me tell you or Mr. Toon tell you. Find out for yourself, because that's something most people could do. And there you go. That's when the water's a mirror on a hot summer day, rent you a TopCon laser level and find out for yourself. Is that fair enough?
That sounds like an interesting way to do it. So now you know Jesse. Jesse
I don't
Kozlowski.
know it that well.
Yeah, so Jesse Kozlowski.
I know he's in New Jersey.
Yep. So he did a similar test. He used 2 theodolites across the lake that was about a half mile across, and it was a calm day. I have it on the screen now, and he leveled his. He set up the same height on both sides. He put a nail in the water at a certain elevation above the water. He measured, and then he went off of that, right, so that both of his theodolite targets were at the same elevation. Went to one side and leveled it, and then shot across, and it's over the top of the other theodolite.
Did he show his bubble in the middle? Did he show on his instrument? Did he prove it? Did he put the camera on the bubble?
I think this is an auto level on this one, actually, but I'll scroll here a little bit, see what he has. Oh no, this is an older one. It's his. Is it Wild? Is that the brand? Oh yeah, there you go. There's the bubble.
He did?
Yep, he shows the bubble.
I'm not familiar with. I've seen some of Jesse's stuff, and I've talked to him over on comment sections and stuff. But I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah. So
I can't.
So then he did it. Then he went to the other side, right?
Yeah.
And he measured from the other side back to the same, the place he was at, and it's above. Again,
it's a what?
When he leveled his instrument and he shot across and set up the crosshairs, it's above the target on the other side. So both sides, he measured and they're angled up in relation to each other. So these are reciprocal zenith angles, and they.
Well, that's similar to what the Discovery Channel showed.
Did they use theodolites in the Discovery Channel?
No, they used a telescope that had a crosshair that could see a helicopter from 6 miles away, but on a smaller scale, basically, he did what the Discovery Channel.
Now, was that telescope that they used, was it leveled? Did they say?
Had to have been, or yeah,
okay,
I think it was. It had some digital. It had.
Okay.
It was a high performance. I called a specialty store that in Wichita, Kansas, and I was trying to find something
they could have brought it from anywhere in the country, of course. The Discovery Channel has a good budget, don't they?
That's true.
So,
that's true.
All right, so here is, and I don't know if you're going to see it on the screen too much. But
I see it.
Yeah,
I see it.
His final results, he took 6 sets of measurements He took zenith angles and then added them, and he got 25 arc seconds over 180 on them, giving him a drop of 0.15 feet over 0.48 miles.
Let me get my screen blown up here so I can read it better.
I know it's a little difficult to see, but
especially when you're my age and I don't have my readers on here, I can go 150%. Hang on. Hang on. That didn't help. Oh, that just does the text. That's not the.
Oh yeah, screen that won't make the screen. I can zoom in a little bit.
I'll go full screen. I'll go full screen.
I messed it up.
Yeah, I can see it.
It'll mess up here in a second. I tried to zoom in and jumped it off the screen. All right.
All I can say is the frozen lake on the Discovery Channel. If the lake was frozen, you could walk across it by a planar surveyor using planar principles.
Okay, no, hold on. I showed you this. Let's not change topics here.
Okay.
Right. This is a licensed in the state of New Jersey geodetic surveyor. Okay, using the instruments he uses every day, right? And he did angles in both directions so that any collimation errors were neutralized, right? As he did it, right? You take it, you flip the scope, you twist it the other way so that anything that's too far vertical up is now the same amount vertical down. So it eliminates errors due to collimation, right?
I'm just looking at this diagram of Jesse's here. His label of vertical line of sight.
It says visual line of sight. Yep.
Excuse me, visual line. My eyesight. Visual line of sight. Our line of sight when I surveyed was our line of sight through the scope. Your line of sight was through. His line of sight appears to be what's level, the horizontal plane. Our line of sight was what we were seeing through the scope. So what he labels as horizontal plane, we labeled that our line of sight. And when you made a turn, it was either because you had an obstruction, a tree, a vegetation, a building.
This is over water, so there's nothing in the way. But when he's saying this, so horizontal plane, and then the line of sight, because he's on a theodolite, which measures zenith angles, right? Where if you have a dumpy level or a transit level, you can't change the vertical. You can only change horizontal, right? If I understand things
a dumpy
correctly.
or it's just level or it's not.
Yeah, so you can't do vertical angles. A theodolite can do vertical angles. So he's turning it down to target the to aim at the target on the other side of the lake. So that's where he's saying the visual line of sight diverges from the horizontal plane, and that's what he confirmed. And it diverges by 25 arc seconds down. So he's a surveyor.
Like I see what he is showing here, but if he was following guidelines of proper survey techniques, he would be using planar surveyors.
I'm sorry. Geodetic surveyors supersede planar surveyors, right? They can measure things bigger than a planar surveyor can. There's limits on what a planar surveyor can survey in size. That
limit
right?
is 10 miles or 10 by 10.
Yeah.
Before they do
what?
It in kilometers.
Before the margin of error is too large. That's what they say in the manuals, right?
The manuals say you do it level to 10 miles. Anything over that, you go geodetic, which is stupid.
And why?
So
but why does it say that?
But why does
it say that?
Why
does it say you have to go geodetic over a certain amount?
In my opinion, they say it because they know that anything under 10 miles pretty much will take care of any survey done by man. That's my opinion. That's the catch-all. That it makes you think that we're living on a globe, but in reality, very few surveys are longer than 10 miles. or they're done in different phases. It's not all one big survey. It's like a
so how was the border of the state of Missouri surveyed, with planar surveyors or geodetic surveyors?
Well, I don't know. The one border is done by the Mississippi River.
Sure.
That the east border is the Mississippi River up into St. Louis. That's from St. Louis down to the Boot Hill. That's what determines the border there. As far as Oklahoma and Missouri, surrounded by more states than any state in the country, we got more contiguous states. But no, I don't know how they determine that.
That would be geodetic surveyors, not planar surveyors. Now, the state of Missouri, I don't know if you know this. It sounds like you didn't get into it too much, but the state of Missouri has 3 planar survey systems.
I did see that.
State plane coordinate systems of 1983. I think that's the official you're using, and they're vertical. Missouri is they're vertically positioned. In Minnesota, we're a taller state than Missouri, but ours are horizontal. So yours, the 3 that you are in Missouri, do you know what projection they use?
Projection?
Yeah. So all of these state plane coordinate systems reference the projection that's used.
No, I don't know.
Okay, so in Missouri, the vertical ones are transverse Mercator projections. That's where you take a sphere, put a cylinder over it, and match it right along one line of meridian or 2 lines of meridian. And then those are the scale on those are accurate, and everything else is over or under if they're in the middle. So there's just a few states that have that: Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida uses a couple different ones actually, but the rest of them, almost all the rest of them, use their horizontal, and those are Lambert conformal conic projections. Now, to map between the state plane system and the NAD 80, there's a system that you have to do. It's not just 1-to-1, and you can't take the coordinates in one state plane system and the neighboring state plane system, just map them over. If the Earth were flat, there'd be only one plane system over the entire country. It'd be so much easier than having to have this projection onto a plane system to the spherical system underneath the NAD 80. It's a pain in the butt, right? If it was seriously flat, it'd be everybody like, screw this, we're going the easy way instead of this hard way. That somehow, if it were flat, translating it to the spherical one now would introduce errors instead of removing errors, and that would make everything way more difficult. So you'd have to somehow be so much smarter than every other geodetic surveyor that's ever going to be in existence, so that you can develop some system to trick them and fool them into not understanding what's actually there and still getting the same accurate results. I don't know how you could possibly do that. That seems like a pretty tall undertaking.
I agree.
And so
let me put it this way. And I on the second interview I did with Mark Sargent, and I had a guy from Australia that said his name was Glenn Williamson. He was going to take me up on my challenge. Hey, I saved my money and I won an out-of-court settlement on USDA corruption. I know no other better way for humanity to spend my money, but I'll challenge anybody who wants to match it. That if you take a transit, no matter when you take 2 transits, an old dumpy level or a top con that can see a lot farther, you find 3 benchmarks or 4 benchmarks, and you go off the elevation that's inscribed on the steel plate, and you survey, you carry that elevation all the way across to another one, and then on to another one. I think the elevations will correspond, connect, and check true using a level transit. And if I'm wrong,
well, there's no reason why that should not happen.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. On a globe, that would never happen. On a globe, that would never happen. They would not correspond. In fact, on a globe, I don't even know what the hell those inscriptions mean. They make no. I mean, on a globe.
Okay, so I don't doubt that you don't understand it. The question is, why would it not work? So you've said it wouldn't work.
Why would it not work?
Yeah, you've said it would not work, but I still don't know why you think it would not work.
If one says 200 feet above sea level, 4 miles away it's 250 feet above sea level, inscribed, set in stone, and you carry that elevation from 200 to the next one, and you end up on 250 to the nuts, and you were surveying on a level.
So you've not done this, but how far is each individual measurement? Right, what's the distance?
Well, on a
half a
dumping
mile?
level, you couldn't go more than 400 feet. On a top con, you can go a half mile.
So what? Here's the problem. When you do a large measurement, say 6 miles, if you did 6 miles in one, the amount of curve is significant enough in that one individual measurement that it's an issue. But when you do lots of short ones, the amount of curve in that short one is very small, and then you reset and you go to the next short one, and you don't introduce enough curve in that one little step to make a difference. So you chop them up into little bitty steps. It's not going to be a problem on a flat surface or on a sphere. It's when you do long ones. Long ones you can't do, and it would show it if you got a. And there are theodolites that exist that are big telescopes, and you can see much farther.
Well, back on our Discovery Channel, it was a long shot and was 24-foot drop. The girls landed on, and that was based on our steel stake under our scope, 2 feet below the scope. The girls were at 78 feet. If the lake was frozen and you used a transit, let me get back to my math that I sent you. If you used a transit that I used, the Leitz model self-leveling transit that could read a quarter mile back when I worked, that's 42 hundredths of a globe would drop 42 hundredths. 4 steps per mile. 6 miles would be 24 steps.
Here's the problem, and you said you're not about the math. The problem that you have in this particular thing, I have it on the screen right now, where you're saying 56 1,000ths of an inch because you do 13 steps. What you did is you just summed these drops. You did not put them into a second order polynomial, which is what you must do on a curved surface. So if you want to disprove the spherical Earth, you need to do it using the correct math, and all you did was sum it. You didn't put it into a second order polynomial. So
I don't know what a second order polynomial is.
And I don't doubt that. So the problem is you can't disprove the Earth with wrong math, and you presented wrong math.
I don't understand how it's wrong.
Because you didn't put it into a second.
Steps, that's a dumpy level.
You did not. Hold on.
The instrument I used.
You need to put it into a second order polynomial. So here's the thing. You've heard this 8 inches per what? The drop.
Well, I've heard 8 inches per mile squared.
There you go.
It's
so
only
the squared is a second order polynomial. So you need to use the correct formula. You need to have a formula that uses squared in it. Okay? And so I'm not going to go through it. I did not check and put it into a second order polynomial, right? But that's what you need to do. So what you've done, and I'm not going to fault you on this, but you did not use the correct math here.
Well, we both agree that an old dumpy level from the 1900s and a top con that you can get today that's reliable to a half a mile. If you went surveying from one USGS benchmark to another one using a 1900 transit and a brand new top con, I mean, it'd take you longer with the old transit, but I'm saying that you would end up on the same elevation using both transits. One would just take the same survey going from one to another. I think you're going to end up they're going to correspond and check true no matter what you use, and that's impossible on a globe.
Okay, so all you did was say, this is what you think will happen, and it's impossible on a globe. You didn't measure it.
No, I'm not just saying it's what I think. I'm willing to put $100,000 cash on it.
And so I'm not doing this right, but you think this will happen, and you have the wrong math. So, yeah.
How's it the wrong math if you're just surveying using just a regular grade survey across a section of Earth using one instrument that's, very limited?
Because you need to apply it in a second order polynomial. If you're going to test the globe, if you're going to test a curve, you need to use a formula that has a curve. That means there has to be an x squared component in it. And you just did these steps and summed the steps. There's no x squared component in it, right? So when you hear, this is the key, when you hear 8 inches per mile squared, right? There's a squaring in there, and your formula just sums things. It doesn't square things. Okay, so that's why. So you say
the square is the progressive drop.
Yes, and you did not apply the squaring. You just summed them. So that's fine. It's the point is, that there is a different formula you need to set it up correctly. And here's the interesting thing. I don't know did you measure these? You have the 1913 manual transit, 20,000 self-leveling transit. Did you log these?
Log them? What do you mean?
When you took these measurements, did you log these measurements? Like you have a journal of these measurements that you took? Because you said the estimated whatever. Oh no, that's the year. I see. Okay. So
the year I have an estimated transit that will be made in 2050. I won't be around to see it, but I'm guessing in 2050 they'll have a transit that can read from a mile. Right now, in 2020 they got one that'll read a half mile. When I retired, they had one that could read.
There's theodolites that can do a mile.
A mile. Read the rod to the 100th. I doubt that.
Just turn the angle.
I doubt that. You got to read the rod to the 100th. Okay, between a 5.5 and a 5.6, it's black, white, red, white, black, white, red, white. You survey long enough, you can just look at it. You don't even have to count up the tenths in between each number. You get to where you just see it and you read it. It's black, white, red, white, black, white, red, white. That's the hundreds.
Okay, so
and you're telling me a theodolite can read 100th from a mile? I seriously doubt that.
A theodolite turns angles, so you could use a theodolite to turn the angles.
Yeah, but I'm talking about reading the rod to the 100th.
But we're just talking about measuring things. A quarter. Right? A theodolite can measure that.
Your measurement is the stadia shot. Your measurement is the top. There's 3 crosshairs. The measurement, the top crosshair minus the bottom crosshair is the distance. The middle crosshair is the reading. Reading stadia, I can tell with a transit how far away the rod man is by reading it's the difference between the top crosshair and the bottom. There's 3 crosshairs. Top and bottom is stadia. That reads distance. Middle crosshair is the shot. And I really doubt that anything we got can read a mile to the 100th on a rod. Like I said, when I retired, we had one. Leads could read a quarter mile. Today, they say a top con can read a half mile. I'm guessing in 30 years they might have one that can read a mile.
Okay, so back to the question here. Did you keep a journal for these measurements you took, or did you log them somehow?
The math I sent you, I determined how much drop there would be in 400 feet, in a quarter mile, in a half mile, and in a mile.
Oh, you didn't actually do any measurements?
Measurements? A mile's a mile. Just find a drag strip or whatever.
No, the drop. The drop. You're quoting drops. Right? You say
I'm quoting drops based on a globe of given size.
Yeah, all right. So
how much would drop?
I thought that you had taken some measurements. So you did not take any measurements. Okay. So you have no measurements
Well,
of flatness. I've been asking
well,
for a year for measurements of flatness, and nobody does anything. Nobody ever has any. So
you're meant, like I said, any shot you take, if you take the top crosshair minus the bottom crosshair, you don't have to stretch a cam line or a tape measure across.
Okay. That's okay. I was just asking if you took measurements.
Your measurement is the top minus the bottom crosshair. There are 3 crosshairs. Stadia. It's called stadia. Reading stadia is your measurement. So you always know how far the guy is away from you.
Okay, that's fine. I thought that you had taken some measurements, but you did not. So okay.
I don't see how you should have to. I mean, it's just extrapolating or interpolating between.
You can't know the shape of the Earth without taking measurements. Somehow, right? You can't know precise measurements of the shape of the Earth. So
Well,
what would, all right, so here's a question. What would the sum of zenith angles be on a flat Earth?
I'm not that familiar. They only worked. I had a little bit of training on a theodolite, but all our work was done with transit. So
okay, so
I don't know. The 360. I don't know.
Okay, so here's the deal. A zenith is from straight up, right? 0 is straight up, and horizontal is 90 degrees. Straight down is 180 degrees, right?
Okay.
So if the Earth is flat and you have 2 theodolites apart from each other, right? And you measure, and the theodolites have a target on their face, right? So if you measure from one theodolite to another, and you get the zenith angle from that. Let's say they're both at the exact same elevations, exact same height. You're going to get if the Earth is flat, you're going to get 90 degrees on one side. You go to the other side, you're going to get 90 degrees on the other side, right? You add them up, they add to 180 degrees. On a spherical surface, what's going to happen is they're going to diverge from each other, right? The vertical datum on each side is going to point away from each other, and when you measure the reciprocal zenith angles and sum them together, you're always going to get over 180 degrees, right?
Okay.
So now when people do measure reciprocal zenith angles, do you know what they get? Because people do it.
Like two theodolites looking at each other from a distance?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know what they... I guess it's not 90 each. It's probably something.
Well, when you sum them together, you get more than 180 degrees every time.
Okay. Every time, huh?
Every time. And that means one thing. That they diverge from each other.
Okay. I guess,
so,
like I said, what I believe, and I'm willing to bet a considerable amount of money that those inscribed, set in stone, I mean, just anywhere you want to do it other than maybe near Mount St. Helens or where there's been a major earthquake in the last 100 years, if you find 3 benchmarks, I think they're going to correspond no matter what transit.
We already went over that.
Transit you use.
We already went over that. That would be expected on a sphere as well. So
no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't.
But you can't.
It wouldn't. I
but you haven't been able to explain the math and describe to me why it would not.
I would. If you're using a dumpy level that can only see 400 feet, and you're using a top con that can see a half a mile, the longest shot between those two, by the time you get to that half mile, 6.5 steps to see how far a top con can see with one shot, those 2 readings are going to be off. Your end point at the end of the half mile, the one shot versus 6.5 steps,
hold on.
It's going to be off.
You're saying
it
should be, but why would it be off? What's the math that says that it should be off?
Because the progression of curve on the longer shot, you're not going to have that progression with little shots, and you're surveying the exact same stretch of road. Your elevation is going to be with the the newer the transit, the longer it can see, the more progression of Earth drop you will have than taking a bunch of little steps to the same place.
Yep.
The end point's going to be a different elevation. But I'm telling you, I'm saying if these things that are set in stone, like Daviess County's got 19 of them. There's a cluster of them within a mile or two of each other around my hometown of Gallatin, Missouri. Man, just go set up on those and use an old level, an old transit, and a new transit, and see if they don't match up true, because I think they do. And I'm willing to bet money on it. And that just cannot happen on a globe.
Yeah, you've just said that. You just keep asserting that, but I don't see a problem with that. But that's fine. So I have up right now a video by Jeff, the Maine surveyor, another licensed geodetic surveyor in the state of Maine, who did take reciprocal zenith angles. And I'll show you here on the video. Let me pull it up here. Here's the top of the hill, and there is his theodolite at the top of the hill. And then he turns some angles there, and I'll jump on to, he logs them in his logbook. Here it is looking at the theodolite at the bottom of the hill. And then, let's see, I think he has, I don't know if, all right. Anyway, I'll jump to the logbook here. So he measured them all. He comes out to, it is a little difficult to read in here. I should ask him to send me a picture of this. Oh, he put it in the comments here too. He came out with 17.1 arc seconds more than 180 degrees in this one.
Does he have any shot where he's taken a reading with using a rod?
No.
A survey rod?
No, why would he do that?
No.
He has better than that. He has a theodolite. That's way better than a survey rod.
No, it's not. You're just made.
Yeah, it is. It's way better. This is like there's a subset of surveying that's planar surveying, and then the superset has theodolites in it that are way better. So, and are more flexible and can do things that planar surveying and rod-based surveying cannot do. So,
well, he's got to know the elevations of every shot. And if you're surveying something that's going to get built...
When you're doing reciprocal zenith angles, you don't need to. Reciprocal zenith angles...
Hand that to a contractor. Hand that to a contractor.
This isn't for a contractor. This is to measure the shape of the Earth. Right? You don't hand the shape of the Earth to a contractor. They don't care about that. They know it's a sphere. So let me do this. Do you notice how many degrees are in a triangle? Just a flat triangle.
180.
All right. Now on the surface of a sphere, how many degrees are in a triangle?
On a surface, it depends on the size of the sphere, I think.
It depends on the size of the triangle. This is so my sister was taking a math class in college, and she needed me to tutor her, and this was the topic: spherical triangles. So this is a college level math. Some people would hit it in high school, but the point is that on the surface of a sphere, every triangle is more than 180 degrees and less than 540 degrees.
Okay.
All right, and I have up right now from Wolfram.com, because they write some high-end math software, showing a triangle. So now there's something they call spherical excess. If you measure a triangle and there's more than 180 degrees, the amount over 180 degrees is called the spherical excess.
Okay.
Right? So surveyors with theodolites can do that, and they have. I had it up here, yes. The transcontinental triangulation and the American arc of the parallel, which is up right here on the screen here, they measured lots of triangles because that's what geodetic surveyors do. They measure triangles. And this particular page here has 3 peaks: Ogden Peak to the SL Southeast base and the SL Northwest base, and they measured a triangle there. 30 degrees, 10 minutes, 56.378 arc seconds, 11 1,000 meters. So it's 11 kilometers, 21 kilometers, 21 kilometers. They did these with theodolites, big ones with telescopes. And they measured a spherical excess of 0.589 arc seconds.
Okay.
This one, 0.506 arc seconds. 582 arc seconds. 1.673 arc seconds. All of these triangles, every one of them, has more than 180 degrees. I have another one here. 62 arc seconds. 39 arc seconds. 62 arc seconds. So these are geodetic surveyors measuring simple triangles, and they've surveyed out the lengths of the triangles, of the sides, and they've measured the angles. And every time they get them more than 180 degrees. How can that happen if the Earth is flat?
I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I'm my
Okay.
line of work. Everything
No.
it was done with a rod. You had to have a stick with it.
Okay, so could I encourage you to maybe, and I can send you a couple PDFs that I've looked at. Read up on how geodetic surveyors do it. If you have some foundation in the surveying industry, you'll get into it quicker than I am. I had to kind of get the background of it because there's a lot of terminology I didn't know. So I can send this to you, and all of these measurements, and this isn't the only book. There's hundreds of places I found that do the same thing and measure spherical excess and actually measure the radius of the Earth. That's what this particular book is doing. It's measuring the radius of the Earth using the 39th latitude across the United States from water to water.
Okay.
So
let me just say this: in the manuals, we both agree in the manuals that up to 10 feet use planar. After that, start using geodetic. I looked up, and a couple years ago, there were 39 man-made bridges that were 10 miles long or longer. Up to those 10 miles, if the surveyors that did the survey to build that bridge used the guidelines of planar, 67 vertical feet of air, fellas, just build it from here to there, and 67 feet of vertical air will buff out. No problem. I think I could get you a better survey using a topo map on top of my desk. I think that's a ridiculous guideline. It's in every survey manual, and it's inexplicable why they would write that as for somebody to follow. Makes no sense to me. That the cutoff.
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
I think that's ridiculous. I sent you one other piece of math. A lot of flat earthers and globe earthers they look at ISS, the thing that's been up there 20 years, our space station, and I did some math that when Bumgardner broke terminal velocity on his Red Bull jump, he was going. He started tumbling, spread eagle out of control, and he broke vertical velocity, terminal velocity. I took his rate of fall, and then I took the NASA's figures. It's going about 17,000 miles an hour in orbit, and based on NASA figures and using what gravity pulled Bumgardner's ass down out of that gondola, I don't see how the ISS could stay in orbit for 20 hours, much less 20 years. Yeah, that's what I sent you. This number two.
Yep, it's up on the screen now.
Yeah, at 17,000 miles an hour, they say the ISS is orbiting. Land speed that a pilot uses, is 4.72 miles per second. And Bumgardner's rate of fall, if the ISS was falling, and that was when Bumgardner lost control and was just spread eagle tumbling. if the ISS, if gravity was pulling it down at the same rate, the ISS would have to be going 28 land speed of 28 miles per second, or 100,810 miles per hour orbiting speed, for it to stay in orbit and not fall down.
Why?
But they're saying it's only going 17,000 miles per hour.
How did you get that number?
Well, I took the numbers off NASA's website, and I took it off Wikipedia on the Red Bull jump.
Yeah, but how did you get
the
28 miles per second? Where did that come from?
28 miles per second. That was based on how that was based on Baumgartner was falling at 360 miles per hour. He broke terminal velocity, and at 360 miles per hour, he was falling to Earth, tumbling, spread eagle. He was falling at 528 feet per second. So I took the 528 feet per second gravity fall, and then how fast horizontally or land speed for the Earth's curvature to fall out from underneath the ISS to keep it in orbit. That's how I got the 28 miles per second land speed, which is 100,810 miles per hour, which is 5.5 times faster than what they say it's orbiting.
Yeah, but I don't see where you're getting that number from. That's my confusion.
Which number do you not see?
28 miles per second. Where did that come from? How did you get that number?
28. Let me think.
All right, so
I know I got it. I got it from Baumgartner's 528 feet per second.
But what does that have to do? How did you go from Baumgartner's speed, which has nothing to do with the ISS's speed? How did you map those?
Well, they're both falling the same. They're both if you drop a bullet and shoot a bullet, they're going to fall. They're going to hit the ground the same.
Oh,
from the gun.
Now, are you aware that the ISS is moving laterally at 17,000 miles per hour, not vertically at 17,000 miles an hour?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
So, all right. So then you took Kepler's laws of motion and applied that and got 28 miles per second?
I took, let me think. I can, it took me most of the night to do this, but not, a couple hours. I took, let's see.
So, all right, let's back up one thing before you do that. You said Shirley Baumgartner.
Oh, I know how I did. How I did it.
Okay.
I took the 8 inches per mile square, the curvature, and determined how fast Baumgartner was falling, and how much you have how far you'd have to go for the Earth to curve away from the ISS per second, and you'd have to go 28 miles. In other words, it takes 28 miles to fall 528 feet of drop. So that's how I got it. Baumgartner was falling 528 feet a second, and if you take the 8 inches per mile squared to drop 528 feet, you got to go 28 miles horizontally. So to go 28 miles horizontally, the ISS would have to be going 100,810 miles an hour. That's how I got it.
All right, so bad math doesn't prove anything. And again, this is bad
math. What's bad about that?
Goodness, it's so wrong. The chat's going crazy. The ISS is moving laterally. The Red Bull jump is going vertically. That's not how it works at all. Wait a minute.
You drop a bullet, you shoot a bullet. They fall to the Earth at the same speed at the same time. Whether the bullet's gone, a quarter mile, a half mile.
Yeah. So the
one you drop, they both hit the Earth at the same time. Is that true?
On a plane.
Is that true?
On a plane. And that's if that's Yeah, there's a whole lot wrong with that math. I'm not even. It was. I don't even know how to correct that. How to explain it.
Well, let's just start with if I shoot a gun this level and I drop a bullet at the same time, don't both bullets hit the ground at the same time?
Yeah. But here's the thing.
Okay. Yeah. That's an answer.
When you're going vertically, like Baumgartner, right? He's accelerating down until he reaches terminal velocity, right? If he were in a vacuum, his acceleration would not stop. He would continue to accelerate, but he does because of the air resistance, the upward resistance from the air and the downward force of gravity equal out at whatever his terminal velocity is, and that's dependent on the air pressure. And as he's higher up, it's there's less pressure, so the terminal velocity is higher than when it's lower. Right?
I would agree with that, right. But the pull of gravity is not that much different between the altitude of the ISS.
Yeah, and from Baumgartner's elevation, it's close enough to 9.8 meters per second squared that for most math you probably can just use that. The ISS.
But he was falling at 5. He did get up to 360 miles per hour because he broke a record. I'm going off Wikipedia's figures. That's all we can do.
Yeah,
and at that rate, he is falling at 528 feet a second.
Yeah, that's fine.
You got to go 28 miles to drop. The Earth drops 528 feet in 28 miles.
Then so the thing is, something in orbit is a bit different. So what happens is in orbit, the velocity is consistent because there's a balance between the fall and the gravity, right? And so they're not accelerating in the same manner, and so it won't be until the ISS is 90 degrees from its starting. But if say you start the ISS above where Baumgartner is, he's going to fall down while the ISS moves laterally. It's not going to be until the ISS gets 90 degrees around the Earth till it's moving vertically, and I can't even explain it to you.
Well, let me try this. NASA. If there's any quote that if anybody gives a damn, I do have my own quote, and my quote is this: I'd rather have a sister that worked in a cat house than a brother who works for NASA. I
don't know what that has to do with this.
NASA had 135 missions in Apollo and the space shuttle, and they managed to have 4 failures with a full trained crew, and they killed 3 of those full crew, the whole crew, on 3 of the 4 failures in 135 missions. Yet somehow they have set to a NASA's perfectly at speed, at altitude, by remote control, 100% remote control over 4,000 satellites without killing anybody on Earth. How did they do? I mean, you got a full crew on board, and they screwed up 4 times, killed the crew 3 times in 100 missions, but they could do 4,000 by remote control and get them right. How's that?
Okay, so just because you don't understand it, got it. So, any actual anything, but because just saying you don't understand it doesn't mean anything. These people are smart. They know what they're doing, and they know math much more than I do. Yeah, we've got somebody saying R dW over dt equals G sub R. I know it's not going to mean anything to you. What's dW? Change in what? It's a differential equation. Did you do differential equations?
Did I do differential equations on what?
Yeah. Do you know how to take a derivative or do an integral?
I don't know. Probably not.
Okay, so that's why I can't explain it to you. How about that?
Okay.
You would need to have enough math to know what a differential equation is in order to have the previous foundational stuff, I think, to as the basis of this, right? You get this in calculus and in the studies past calculus. I've got where is it? Let me get you this book. I'll show it to you.
were you familiar, or did you know that there were these tens of thousands of benchmarks set everywhere, all across the continent?
Yeah, I know that. So I have on the screen here my advanced engineering mathematics book. This was a bit. This was an absolute bitch. Lot of challenging topics in here, and this book I used for 3 or 4 classes in a row. So, yeah. This you don't need to understand the orbits, but if you had this, then we could have a conversation.
Okay, well, I shouldn't even have brought up. I just.
Well, let me just put
based on the figures that NASA gives and Baumgartner gave.
It's wrong.
I just.
So here's the deal. Let me just say this. Wolfie said flat earthers don't take the time to do math, right? And then you did math, great. But you did it wrong. You didn't understand it. That's fine if you don't understand it. Just be aware that you don't understand it. If you're going to try to bring it up again and say, well, I just used the numbers from NASA, you didn't apply the math correctly. It doesn't matter if you use the numbers from NASA. You did the math wrong. That's fine. Right?
Well, if I'm that wrong, then somebody ought to come and take my $100,000. That's a
what's your
bona fide offer that I'm making publicly.
Oh, yep. So people keep telling me to ask about the Eiffel Tower from London.
I made a mistake on that. I made a huge mistake on that, and I tell you why. Ever since I realized that the Earth is not what they tell us, I was hoping and praying that something would happen. Somebody smarter than me would, and actually, there were apparently 2 videos. One, a woman's voice, and it was a real short video. The video I saw was like 10 minutes long. It was a man's voice, and there were calculations, and they had the Eiffel Towers after this COVID. Everybody was quarantined, and there wasn't much trafficking with vehicle, and maybe the smog lifted. I fell for that. I fell for it as a dumbass. But Wolfie, he exploited me and exposed me to the fullest extent. He ran background checks on me, my career, my divorce.
Wolfie
everything.
did this? I don't think Wolfie did this.
Wolfie's people that comment on Wolfie's channel did. Yeah, hell, they found stuff on me that I didn't even know. They found my Rookie of the Year in 1983. I didn't. They found stuff that I didn't even know existed about me. So yeah, they ran background checks for sure. But all I did was make one comment, an errant comment on one video of his, and that's what they did to me. That they most certainly did. And then Wolfie wanted me to send him a photograph. He asked me if I was fat,
I was asking about the Eiffel Tower, though, not about Wolfie.
I fell for it.
Okay.
I fell for it.
Somebody's
There's
saying
a tower.
Willibrord Snellius. I don't even know who that is, but somebody said that you should look at that. I don't know what that is. No, so.
Yeah, I sure. That set me back. It sure did. I fell for that.
So, all right.
It was designed to.
Now you said Wolfie did all this stuff, but then you changed your story to Wolfie's people. So, I'd keep it consistent, right?
Well, there was comments on Wolfie's channel. They knew when my daughter became estranged. They knew that. They knew they dug up something from 1983.
I'm not. It was that you said that Wolfie did it. That's
Wolfie
different.
started asking me for photographs.
But Wolfie,
I sent him a racing photograph.
But Wolfie
he says,
did
I want to see what you look like now.
Yeah, but
I
Wolfie,
sent him my driver's license.
Hold on. Wolfie did not do this background check on you, though, right? It was. So you're saying that Wolfie did the background check, but it wasn't Wolfie that did the background check.
No, it was his commenters. It was in the comment section.
Just trying to be clear. That's all.
No, I'm just saying they knew stuff about me that I didn't even know existed.
Yep.
So
and that it's tough. I keep a lot of my stuff private as well. So.
They told me I was a bad father. They said they were very cruel.
That's not cool.
Well, they did. They certainly did. And off of one dummy Eiffel Tower, I just fell for something. That's all it was. That's all it was. Anyway,
so let's see.
Wolfie personally asked me for these photographs. He did, and I obliged him.
Let's see. Somebody I forgot. Dog.
All I can say is, if I'm wrong, come take my money. Ever since I made that announcement on my interview, the second interview with Mark Sargent, I went to the bank. I took out the money. It's in my house in a bolt-down, fireproof safe, ready to go. Anybody wants to take me up on it. I was asked to go to Georgia. They called me when Thompson sued Garcia in Barrow County, Georgia. They asked me to be each side could have one material witness, and the flat Earth community selected me to go down to Barrow County, Georgia, to defend, to testify on Garcia's behalf. So they believe in me that much.
Yep.
And I did go to Georgia.
So, all right. I'm gonna do some super chats if you want to stick around for a little bit there. But one thing that is, I thought I'd point out to you, is that the definition of level. Level is defined as the curved surface of the Earth, or a surface which is everywhere perpendicular to the direction of gravity. So I have on my website at mctoon.net/level a whole bunch of different, and some of these are from Jesse Kozlowski, some are from a guy named Cosmonaut6, and some I added in myself. But just to point out, there's a book from the 1700s called The Theory and Practice of Surveying, containing all the instructions requisite for the skillful practice of this art. This is a version from 1814, but it is first published in the late 1700s. The true level is a curve conforming to the surface of the Earth. So when you say the sea level is the same everywhere, yes, sea level is the same. It is a curve according to surveying. I have page after page of level is a level surface defined as a curved surface, which at each point is perpendicular to the direction of gravity at the point.
Do carpenters use a plumb bob to determine what direction of the core of the Earth, or do they use a plumb bob to determine a right angle?
They use a square to determine a right angle.
They also use a plumb bob to determine a right angle too.
A plumb bob tells you it'll give you a right angle from horizontal. Yep, no problem with that. A plumb bob at different points of the Earth diverges from each other. They are not parallel across the Earth, as Jeff, the main surveyor, measured when he measured the reciprocal zenith angles. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you this. The entire field of surveying defines level as a curved surface. So let me look at.
We don't have a tool. We don't have a tool that measures or that follows that curved surface. All of our tools are straight line of sight.
Well, you can a theodolite can measure, just like I showed you in Jesse Kozlowski's half mile across the lake. If there is a drop, then you're measuring the curve. You can measure a curve with a dumpy level or a transit level. The longer the better. If there is a drop across a distance, then that is measuring the curve.
Okay, just back. The girls that flew across the 6 Mile Lake were below the 10. We're within the flat plane surveyor guidelines. We're going 6 miles, not 10. So we're using flat plane survey principles. When they landed on the other side of the lake, they are at elevation 78 based on a stake below our scope. We walk across the frozen lake. We reset up. We shoot a 5.0. Now we're at elevate. Our height of instrument is 83. the lake is frozen and we send the girls back across the lake, you've got to get back to 100 on the stake.
The elevation of the surface of the lake is going to be the same all the way across the surface. Curved or flat, the elevation is the same.
Then he should have shot a 2.0. I'm just saying, all land surveys, you have to come back to where you began. And once you go picking up...
Not geodetic surveyors, and they're a superset of land surveyors. So...
I saw a geodetic... I saw a comment. I'll put it this way. The U.S. Corps of Engineers, the United States... the Corps of Engineers, people think of them to save a town when it's going to get flooded and stuff, putting up sandbags and stuff, but the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over every body of water, every river, every stream, every creek. That's jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. There is a comment, I quoted it on my interview with Sergeant, and it said, to all the ignorant people in the comment section, it said, I am a land surveyor in with the Army Corps of Engineers in over 20 years, 20 years plus, and he says, we have never accounted for the curvature of the earth. I can't say who said it, but that's who he claimed to be. I know I never accounted for the curvature of the earth, but I do know when I was in Daviess County that the Corps of Engineers took a 20-mile stretch of Grand River between Chillicothe, Missouri, and Gallatin, Missouri. They took a snaking, meandering river, Grand River, and they straightened it, arrow straight. They dug a new river channel, and I don't think they accounted for curvature building the new river channel.
Wait, you don't think doesn't count. I don't give a damn about I don't think.
Well,
I'll just ignore that.
Well,
I don't think. That doesn't. I don't care.
I knew some of the guys that were working on it. I can't go back now, but there was a comment on a YouTube video that said, from a guy that claims to be a surveyor with the Army Corps, but building the Panama Canal, they would have had to have counted for curvature. I don't think they did, but I am using the word think.
Yeah. So I have up the on screen. I don't know if you would have dealt with this or not, but it's the Mississippi Coordinate System of 1983, a manual for land surveyors. Were you a land surveyor in 1983?
No, I was in college.
It was revised in 1996. Were you a surveyor in 1996?
Yes.
Okay, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Division of Geology and Land Survey. So this is the book that applied to your industry. It talks about plane surveying and the limits of it, and then it talks about the globe, the axis of rotation, the equator, centrifugal force, gravitational force, gravity. Talks about the geoid. Are you familiar with the geoid?
I'm familiar with the rock that has crystals in the center of it.
No, that's not what. So they when they're defining the surface of the sea level, or sort of the curved surface of the Earth, they define a spheroid, which would be like the NAD in 1980. NAD 80 is a spheroid, right? So the three state plane systems in Missouri are a projection off of NAD 80. And if you're going to go between state plane systems, right, east and west or east and central, you need to go from the state plane system down to the geoid, transfer across, and then bring it back up to the state plane system. So this is your book for your industry.
Yes.
So maybe this is one you want to have a look at to understand some of the stuff that you're responsible for. So, and it talks plenty about taking the curvature of the Earth into account. It depends what you do. If you're doing small stuff, you don't need to. If you're doing big stuff, you need to. There you go. West zone, central zone, east zone. So, all right. Let me read a couple things. Let's see. We talked about the kinds of surveying. We talked about the Eiffel Tower. Jessica G says So Alyssum was talking about the Eiffel Tower. Jessica G says, be right back walking doggos. Hope I don't miss any evidence. Glad to know. I hope your dogs had a good walk. Alyssum again says, ask him why planar surveys are only accurate in small areas. We did kind of cover that already, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, John Rapp is an Australian. He says, as I'm a slow typer, big g'day to you, awesome chat. John Rapp says, surveyor doesn't know sea level isn't a flat plane. Question mark?
That's a question to me.
Yeah. I think it's rhetorical, but if you want to comment on it, I think
the surveyor doesn't know sea level is a what?
Is not a flat plane. Right, so I just covered the definition of level just a second ago.
The surveyor thinks sea level is a flat plane.
So you disagree with the rest of your industry. So okay.
I didn't work with any of the industry that were geodetic.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, and something else that was kind of interesting. Until this flat Earth, globe Earth came up, we never accounted for refraction. We took the shot. I mean, we weren't supposed to take a shot over 1,200 feet, but we would push it to 1,500 feet using rod markers. The rod man, a good rod man, will bring you back the last 3 or 4 shots that you couldn't really see. But you could see with a rod marker. Then he would come back and tell you what that rod marker was on, and we would push it to 1,500 feet with the leads. But no refraction, even at that distance, we never accounted for refraction.
At 1,500 feet, what would be the effects of refraction if you had a coefficient of refraction of, say, plus
there's a standard.
Plus 0.33. What would be that?
Yeah.
How much would it be? Not much. Not much. Not much. Short distances is not.
It'd be a few hundreds. It'd be a few hundreds.
Yeah, it could be. Now, the nice thing is a lot of your stuff was probably not over water during the really bad times of day to measure things. Right? So, 1,500 feet at half a mile. Let's see. Half a mile. I'm not going to do the math in my head. It's not much. So the coefficient of refraction used by the U.S. Meteorological Society, which is mostly about radar, which is refracted more, uses plus 0.33. Gauss used plus 0.17, which is what you'd probably use for long distance, or 0.13, depending on your elevation.
Right. But they never told us to. I believe there is such a thing as refraction. You bet. But we never took it into account. I would like to give one reference that I think is pretty compelling. Whoever did the Rock Creek video on YouTube, Rock Creek, I think that's a hell of a video. Over the frozen lake, with the snow-covered frozen lake. Have you seen that? Rock Creek?
I've seen a couple, and of course the lapse rate. The lapse rate. Now, do you have frozen lakes in Missouri? I don't know if you're far enough north to get.
Yeah, no, the lake. I mean, as far as to drive over, I'm sorry, Rock Lake video.
Yeah. So
if anybody.
Okay. Have you?
I don't know.
Have you been ice fishing? How about that?
No.
Okay.
I haven't.
The difference in temperature from where your feet are to where your head is drastic on a frozen lake. It is very brutal sometimes. If you don't have good boots, it is absolutely terrible.
Well, I've sure cracked enough ice on a pond for the cows to drink.
Yeah, so,
I have done that.
Okay, so here's the deal. The lapse rate on a lake is significant if it's frozen. Very significant. So, and lapse rate, determines coefficient of refraction, right?
Right.
So the coefficient of refraction over a frozen lake is very high. It can be 1.0 or higher. So doing observations over a lake without taking refraction effects into account is pretty bad. I would never trust any measurements over a frozen lake if they did not take refraction into account. Measuring.
Well, this guy had a level P900 camera that was less than a foot off the ground.
Exactly the opposite of a good way to do measurements. Yeah, because like I said, you need to take into account the lapse rate, and you didn't mention anything about lapse rate. So did they measure the temperature at 1 foot and the temperature at 3 feet? He did. So then I don't give a damn about any of those measurements because they don't know the lapse rate. And on a frozen lake, it can be more than 1.0. So I would expect that at 1 foot elevation, you can see indefinitely far because the lapse rate can be 1.0 or higher. Do you know what a lapse rate of 1.0 is? What that means? Okay. Lapse rate of 1.0, coefficient of refraction of 1.0 means that the arc that the light travels is equal to the arc of the radius of the Earth. So you can see indefinitely far.
Really?
Yes. There is
refraction is the same as the curvature of the Earth.
That's the definition of a coefficient of refraction of 1.0 is where the arcs are the same. Coefficient of refraction of 0 is no curve at all, and you basically don't see that.
Well,
so
if there's any, you didn't seem to mind my suggestion to go out to a public lake that's the water's like a mirror on no wind, a still day, and rent you a TopCon laser level, and calibrate the rod receiver and set it up on a dam, calibrate the rod receiver to the water directly in front, and row yourself up or walk upstream a half a mile and take a reading with a beeper. If you're on the surface, she's flat. If you're a 1.6 inches above the surface, it's curved. You didn't seem to mind that suggestion.
Yeah, well, and that's not a frozen lake.
No, that's a summer day with the water like a mirror.
Yeah, so that's a different coefficient of refraction. Right, and so
then it's a good suggestion.
So then I showed you an example that was much more precise because a laser has a cone. It's not perfectly collimated, so it gets wider as it goes farther out. So that increases the vertical area that's going to give you your beeps. So you'd want to you'd have to do it well. You'd need to get the top and bottom and then average it to get your vertical height there. So, all right. Let's move on here. Stringer News 1 says 2 words notably absent: vertical datum. So I think he has some good background in surveying. So John Rapp is asking, are we getting to see why sea level is flat or curved? And we did cover that, John Rapp. Surf, hey, you know Surf. What is Ray's explanation for selenilian?
I saw his comment on that video we've had dialogue on. Is that the computer program for the stars? Is that what he's talking about?
No, that would be stellarium. The selenilium.
I'm sorry.
Selenilian is when you see the sun at the same time as you see the moon being eclipsed by the Earth. So you see the lunar eclipse.
All I know is I shared that some guy with wearing a hood with glasses and facial hair, him and his girlfriend, was on the east side of St. Louis. On the Illinois side, they filmed a lunar eclipse, and the shadow of the moon came down from the top down, which was, in my opinion, the wrong direction. It should have came from the bottom up. And the guy that's doing the filming, this poor bastard was so indoctrinated, he starts flinging his arms and tries to explain the inexplicable right before your eyes. I mean, you see the sun coming up, you see the moon, and the other on the 180 degrees on the other side, and the shadow is coming down from the top until the whole moon eclipses. and I would have thought that the shadow would come
Okay, so
the other.
so there's actually no problem with that. So here's the question to you then: how, if the Earth is flat, how does an eclipse happen?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that flight from San Diego to Perth or
Sydney, yeah.
Sydney, yeah.
QF-24.
There's It I can't explain that, but I don't think you can explain these USGS monuments checking true no matter what you use using a level transit, but they do.
They
do.
Sorry, so you don't quite get the math for that. And
no, I don't. And
so,
I was a surveyor
so,
for 27 years,
yeah.
and I don't get the math on that.
Yep. So here's the deal: like the flights don't work, the eclipses don't work, lunar and solar. Neither makes sense. The spherical excess.
That eclipse shadow don't look. That eclipse shadow should not come down from the bottom.
Well, that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Just not understand.
There's nothing wrong with it. Watch the video.
Here's the deal.
Shit.
Not understanding the globe and the geometry around it does not disprove it. You have to understand the geometry first. And I'm just telling you that you don't have the understanding of that. And there's no problem with that. People don't say, "Oh no, that totally disproves the Earth." It doesn't. But so there's this long list of things that don't work on flat Earth at all, not even close, and there's no explanation, right? These flights happen weekly, and there's dozens of them around, and not dozens. There's I think 10 maybe that are in the southern hemisphere that are long flights that could not work on a flat Earth. And they happen multiple times a week.
Right.
Spherical excess on measured triangles, reciprocal zenith angles, too much. Measurements of rotation of the Earth using many different measurement techniques, like optical techniques. This is a really cool one. They evacuated the air out of a chamber. They used strong magnetism to levitate a plastic ball that was spinning, and they measured the change in spin to measure the rotation of the Earth. They put superfluid helium-4 in a little toroid, and they put a sensor in it to measure the rotation of that superfluid helium, which doesn't have any viscosity, so only the rotation of the Earth imparts a movement on it, and they measured a movement on it. All these things measure things that cannot happen if the Earth is flat, but totally work on a sphere.
You brought up flights, and recently in the news, I'm no pilot. Thought about getting my pilot's license because I got bored with my retirement. But you brought up flights, and right now nobody's flying. The air traffic is predominantly cargo, supply and demand. Anchorage, Alaska, is the 67th largest city in the United States. It's isolated up by the North Pole, and right now Anchorage, Alaska, with cargo, just doing supply and demand, is the busiest airport in the world right now. It's on the news, it's on YouTube. What's the busiest airport in the world? It's Anchorage, Alaska now, since nobody's flying anywhere, and it's just, did everybody get a yen for whale blubber all of a sudden? Why the hell is Anchorage, Alaska the busiest airport in the world now?
Answer the question if you have it, I guess.
I don't. Well, if you look at the flat Earth map, it kind of tells you why it might. But on the globe, it sure as hell don't tell you why it is. But that's in the news right now. Since nobody's
why do you
flying,
think that's a problem?
Why do I think because if it's all supply and demand, it shouldn't be going through Anchorage.
Why?
Why? Unless everybody wants whale blubber, I just don't see why food, medicals, whatever cargo people need, supply and demand. Why is Anchorage the busiest airport in the world? With COVID-19, it's become the busiest airport in the world.
But why is that a problem?
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Why does it not make any sense? Just saying it doesn't make any sense doesn't make it not make any sense. I'm asking, why does it not?
Geographically, just just supplying people with what they need, that needs air travel. It just, I don't know why it has to all go through Anchorage.
Okay, so, but that doesn't mean anything, though. If it's like this,
it's a fact.
are you trying?
It's a reported fact right now that there's more takeoffs and landings in Anchorage than any place else.
But you're not making any. Like, why does that matter? Why
because
is that?
The world is, air traffic has changed drastically because of this pandemic. It's not people want desired locations that people want to go. It's supply the people that people need, that needs to get to the people. It's not. It's product. It's not people.
Okay.
It's product to the people. And Anchorage, I doubt if Anchorage is in the top 1,000 largest cities in the world, but it's the 67th largest city in our country. But right now, it's the busiest airport in the world. More takeoffs and landings right now.
But you've not made a point. You've just said.
What the hell are they all taking off and landing in Anchorage for?
Well, it could be that it's a convenient spot partway between Japan and the rest of the United States. If you plot it out on a great circle, it's a pretty good central point there.
Okay, it looks pretty isolated on the globe to me. It's a pretty small town to be the biggest the most busiest airport. They're not. It's the airport isn't. It's a pretty small airport, but that's where the most takeoff and landings are on a daily basis. Right.
I have on the screen right now a line, a great circle route between Japan and Southern California.
Yeah.
Right, and it goes very close to Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there were things going between Anchorage between Japan and the United States. Anchorage would be a great place to stop, take some stuff off, distribute it to another plane to continue going. It's partway between many parts of Asia and even the Indonesia area and the United States. It's a great central point. So I don't know what that's an issue. So yeah, it's a
It wasn't that busy when people were traveling, but now it's the busiest.
Sounds great. I don't know what the problem is. So, all right. So you brought up nothing there. All right. Let's I don't know. Let's move on here. John Rapp, level is not flat. That's your problem, says John. Bearded Devil. Do you know him? He's a
Nope.
good guy. He says, I just tuned in and already inclined to ask, Dear Flat Earther, what's the rate of bottom-up disappearance of an object on a flat surface? Thanks.
What's the rate of?
Yeah, how do we? What's if things disappear bottom up with increasing distance over water? So what's that rate? What's the formula for that?
I don't know that formula, but I know the girl she disappears feet first and up to the hem of her dress and on up. Yeah.
So why?
The point of diminishing returns. I don't know the formula on that.
Okay. So
I don't.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Can I use a stadiated 90 millimeter Celestron to survey? Says Don Giovanni. A Celestron is a telescope. So if you can affix it to something so that you can get vertical and horizontal angles like in a theodolite, you certainly could. They did use telescopes in the 1900s and 1800s to do surveying. So
that's all a transit is a telescope on a level.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Stringer News 1 has a sticker that says "Game Over." Thank you, Stringer News 1. Alyssum, remind him that there is a reason he fell for the Eiffel Tower. What is the reason?
A reason I said I made a mistake and I fell for a. What more you want from me?
Yeah.
I admitted it.
Yep. William Foley says, based on the the math skills, he'd go back and resurvey everything that you surveyed in the path. Naughty William, that's a little rough there. Willie Merck. Oh, that's a good one. Why don't you pay the $100,000 to go to space yourself? I don't think you can go to space just yet. But would you go? It's a question. Say the not SpaceX, the Blue Origin or the others. They're working on commercial space travel. So would you go up in for a half hour, an hour in space? Would you do that?
Well, you're asking me if I'd do that? No, I don't think I would. And I nominate Boeing, the company. I nominate Boeing as the educator of the year, because before the 737 acts, most people couldn't tell an Airbus from a Boeing, and now the common man, the layman, can tell a 737 from a 320. So in plain ID, I think thanks to Boeing, they've increased our IQ for plain ID worldwide. Those who know do, those who don't teach. And Boeing has taught us how to determine an Airbus from a Boeing. So I nominate Boeing for Educator of the Year.
So why would you not go to space? Say it wasn't on Boeing, but it was on the in one of the others. Safety?
I don't know. I've flown. I'm not afraid of flying. The older I get, the more cautious I get, as I guess is my answer. I used to drive race cars, and I'm not sure I'd do that anymore.
Yeah. Accidents tend to get a little worse as you're older, I suppose.
Oh, I've flipped in a sprint car more times than I know. Probably 14, 15 times. Been injured twice.
All right, so let's see. Alyssum saying, we didn't need to run background checks. He kept bringing it up. He even told us that his family didn't invite him to his own mother's funerals. He gave out the names and addresses of his family members.
I didn't give addresses to my family members. I said what town they lived in.
Okay.
They live in Sedalia, but yeah, that's some of the things that people. That's just these people that say the Earth is flat. We get ostracized. We get cast away from. That was pretty shitty on my family's part not to tell me, because I had people calling me asking me where I was, and my dad and my brother didn't even bother to contact me from 90 miles away. That's a pretty shitty thing to do.
Yeah, that does suck.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. NANA says, math is the devil's tool. Embrace it, love it. He's being sarcastic. And then says, Hail Santa. Let's see. Oh, MIG-Flug will get you to the edge of space for $15,000, says Willie Merck. Would you take...
To the edge of space?
Yeah, would you take a MiG flight to the edge of space where if you don't see the curvature of the Earth, they will refund your money? Would you do that?
Oh, I guess. They're saying you'll see the curvature of the Earth?
Or they'll refund your money, yep.
Is that for real? Are they doing that? Is that a...
yeah, as far as I know, it is. James May from Top Gear went in that. You know Top Gear, right? Oh, you race cars. You got to know Top Gear.
Actually, I'm not familiar. Is it an equipment? I use Simpson.
No, it's a TV show from England.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay,
I'm not familiar with it.
All right, so Baron von G. What did Baron von G? Hold on a second. What did Baron von G do? I gotta see. Ooh, yeah, that's definitely time him out. Let's see. Beach 8 says, stop listening to Sargent. He's lying to you. And I agree. Mark Sargent is not telling the truth. I don't think Mark Sargent thinks the Earth is flat. I think it's his job. It's his career. And he can't change it. If he were to say the Earth is not flat, there goes his income stream. So he's a bit tied
Well,
to it.
I've interviewed with Mark twice, and all I can know, he asked me to go to Georgia for Garcia, and he's always treated me with respect. I've never seen him do or say anything that would make me doubt his sincerity on the focus of his work right now. So I disagree with that.
Somebody said you race MGs. You don't race MGs. My friend races MGs. So, let's see. And Hugh Jars. Are you familiar with the work of Hugh Jars?
I am not.
Yes, Hugh Jars is pretty good. If you take away passenger traffic, the busiest cargo airport becomes the busiest in the world. It's obvious. So, and I have been to Anchorage, they have a lot of land there. A lot of land. Alaska's massively huge.
Yeah.
And
it is.
so if you were to have a place that's conveniently sort of in between two other places, and you wanted to store things there, a place with a lot of land would be good. Also, it has a major seaport in Anchorage. It's called Anchorage for a reason, because you can anchor there. So it's how
they got the name.
Yeah, the bay comes all the way up to this point, and right at the tip of the point is where Anchorage is. So I was last July, almost a year ago right now, I was in Anchorage, and we went down to Kenai, and the Kenai River goes right down into that same bay on the Kenai Peninsula. So we saw lots of ships going by. Yeah.
I bought a new house in Kansas City in 2000, and my house and my entire yard is supported by limestone pillars 50 feet apart. Kansas City has the largest subtropolis in the world, and most people don't know that. And if you just want an interesting fact, it's off the subject, but the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs stole all the mineral rights to Kansas City. Every inch of concrete, sidewalk, driveway comes from Hunt Midwest, and he's dug out a whole city underneath a city. And Kansas City, Hunt Midwest subtropolis, is the largest underground city in the world.
Wow, that's pretty.
Check it out.
Interesting. Yeah.
Check it out.
So, Hugh Jars, again, is wondering, are you familiar with the South Celestial Pole?
South Celestial Pole.
Yeah. So, in the northern hemisphere here, we have the North Celestial Pole, which is Polaris is about half a degree off the center of rotation. So, if you take a time-lapse picture of the sky, and how far south are you? I'm at 45 degrees north latitude, and you're 35 degrees.
I'm not sure. I got to get my globe out. Whatever it is, I don't know. Kansas City.
You still have a globe?
It's the heart. Huh?
You still have a globe?
I have a globe. Of course I do. Yeah.
Let's see. Kansas City is about 39 degrees north latitude. Actually, so when they surveyed across the 39th latitude, they would have gone right near Kansas City in that survey. Somebody's asking, where is that? You want to look at that. It's mctoon.net/r is where you can find that particular document, the transcontinental. Oh, I just forget it. They went across the United States. All right, so if you go outside at night, you look up in the sky, the North Celestial Pole is 39 degrees above true level, right? So if you get your TopCon and then you get a theodolite and point it up 39 degrees, that's where this North Celestial Pole is. And everything rotates around it. It actually makes a little bit of sense on a flat Earth with some sort of a dome rotating around it, but the problem is if you go south, if you're on the south shore of Australia or South Africa or New Zealand or South America, and you look due south, you see the South Celestial Pole. Now, if you're looking on the flat Earth map, those are all looking in opposite directions from each other. The South Celestial Pole is fixed due south, always due south from as soon as the sun goes down until the sun comes up. It's always there, all points south of the equator that you can see it. It doesn't move. And you can see it simultaneously from multiple positions due south. And these people on the flat Earth map would be looking away from each other. Right? But they see the same south celestial pole rotating in a circle the opposite direction of the north celestial pole. This does not make any sense on a flat Earth. It makes perfect sense on a sphere that's rotating. So what do you think about the south celestial pole?
Well, I'm not an astronomer. Or the guys that look at stars. I stuck to the ground and I measured the ground, and I can't argue it, but I don't think that you guys can argue. Like I said, I made my bet. I offered the money. It's here, and it just they just couldn't line up using any transit. The numbers wouldn't correspond. I say they do on all these tens of thousands of benchmarks set in stone that are engraved on a steel plate. I don't know why we're looking up at the sky when we have those benchmarks set in stone.
Well,
I don't know why
you can look up at the sky. You can look at the sky to measure your location and the shape of the thing you're standing on.
I understand.
There's no problem with that.
They navigated, I guess, through on oceans and stuff. But I mean, when you got them set in stone and they're engraved, you can't change engraved steel plates. I mean, on a globe, they don't even make sense. I don't even know what their use would be.
I think they make perfect sense on a globe.
I don't think the Department of Interior would have spent 100 years laboring to put these things in for nothing.
But they make perfect sense.
Not to me, they don't.
I don't care. You can't do the math. That's the problem.
I can do the math. If you just got a stretch of road that had a hill that you could see a half a mile, you take a top con, you take an old dumpy level, and you survey the same stretch of road, you're going to end up on a different elevation just by the equipment. As technology improves and capabilities increase due to the progressive nature of the ball, the drop, it throws everything off. But no matter what you use, these benchmarks aren't off. Benchmarks that was set in 1913 as opposed to a benchmark that was set in 1960. I think that's the for me, that and all land surveys must close. Anybody listening, just call any land survey company and ask them if they close their circuit. I called the 5 here in Kansas City. I got to speak to 4 of them. I got to speak to a technical person in 4. I said, "Do you close your surveys?" And the answers were yes, of course, you bet we do, absolutely.
But how does that only happen if the Earth is flat? How does that rule out?
Because
that the Earth
it doesn't
is a
matter
sphere?
how many times they relocate the transit. It doesn't matter. As long as they're under 10 miles, they're using planar surveys. So you got a survey that's 6 miles across, and you're making so many, you're relocating the instrument so many times, and then you got to come back and zero out at where you began. That's just not possible on a.
I think it's perfectly fine and predicted on a sphere, and you didn't really. You just all you've done is say I don't think it's possible, so that's fine. I understand.
Go back to Jesse's diagram. Where with his line of sight, his vertical or his visual line of sight, that's just you can't. You can't get back to where you began and zero out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but here's the deal. On the surface of a sphere, when you go one direction and then come back by any other route, you're going to undo any of the curve that you went over. There's nothing wrong with the math there, but that's fine. We've been going at this long enough. I think it's
okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on and for having a good conversation. sometimes it gets contentious, and I don't like that. I like to have walk away in a civil manner. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Anything you want to say?
Thank you, MC Tim.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before you go?
Okay. The gentleman early on that wanted the information on Tony Stewart, to have you just give him my email address.
Oh, yep.
And thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. I'm gonna close off with the rest of the people here in a minute, but we'll good luck talking
Bye-bye.
with crashes. All right. Bye. All right. Well, hey, I thought that might have gone bad if it by the tone of some of the emails that went, but it was good. So, yeah, it was civil. Yeah, Surf. Did you think? Because Surf and I went back and forth talking about this before. Did you think that was going to get a little heated, or not? I kind of did. So, and NA says maybe this guy's off his meds. I just don't think he quite has a grip of the math necessary. And I don't fault anybody for not having it. We do math in high school, and a lot of people after high school don't do math. It's not part of their career. It's not part of their education. So the things that you did in 8th grade, you can't do anymore if you're not ready. You got to review it, right? If you're gonna take somebody that's been out of high school for 20 or 30 years and say, all right, I need you to solve a triangle. I'll give you you can use sine, cosine, tangent. Go. I don't know what to do, right? I'll just use the law of sines. Go ahead. I don't know what to do. Of course, you can Google it and then learn. So, yes, Surf says, considering how he talks in comments, I did expect him to be far worse. So, yes, thank you very much, Ray. It was decent. So, all right. But surveying requires maths, right? I don't think it sounds... So he didn't even do, like, planar surveying. He did very much smaller local surveying, where he started with a description of a location. The fence post on the corner of this field, and then you go this way and this way. Yeah, that's not... and I think planar surveying, they actually use the state plane system for coordinates, and so they'll use coordinates. I'm not a surveyor. I haven't had enough education in that, but I think that they do that in planar surveying. So, and certainly I've read it a whole lot and spoken with both Jesse and Jeff, the main surveyor, a few times about geodetic surveying, and some of the videos where he talks about adding in the geodetic variation, right, that you need to do for bigger things, that they, when you're looking at the elevation, because if there's a sphere, it's going to drop down, and if it's not a sphere, right, and so they do that. So anyway, can I have Ray's email address? I need $200,000 to get a $5 million inheritance released. Really? Dark Seed. Yeah, I'll give you his email address. Does this $5 million inheritance have anything to do with a prince in Africa? Because that might not be on the level. Just telling you. So, Darkseed, send me an email, mctune@mctune.net, and I'll shoot your email address to him, since he didn't give me permission to share his with anybody other than Crashes. So, so yeah. All right, that was good. Next week, McFlatty and Hip Hop Hippie. That's going to be a crazy one. If you thought anybody that you've seen was a little off the rocker, you put Hip Hop Hippie and McFlatty together, and there's no rocker to get off of. They're out, they're gone, totally gone. So that will be an interesting one. So it's going to be me and maybe FTFE or somebody. You want a 2-on-2 or something. So, yes, Heat Shield, that's right. Hip Hop Hippie and McFlatty. You heard it right. So yeah, Baron Von G. I don't know, Baron Von G. Send me an email with whatever your beef is going on here, if you have something going on. So, yes, a dumpster fire with Hippie and McFlatty. So, yeah, Nerd Angel says, no, don't invite McFlatty. Nerd Angel and McFlatty had a major argument a couple weeks ago, so that was funny. So anyway, that's coming up. The week after, I'm going to be out of town. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's anniversary, and we're gonna take a vacation. So might do a short stream, might do something for fun. I might replay something with some edits in it and do it as a premiere. I'm not sure yet. So Mark Beiser says McFlatty is a turd. I cannot argue that. Yeah. So what you gonna do when Hip Hop Kangaroo asks where's the curve? I don't know. Yeah, and I think Hip Hop Hippie is the Holocaust denier, but I've made it clear when he's on my channel we don't talk about that. We keep it on topic. So anyway, if you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you did not like it, give it a thumbs down. I don't care. If you have something to tell me, put it in the comments. I'd appreciate if you gave a subscribe and even click the bell if you haven't done that yet. Thank you very much to everybody who did super chats. I missed one the first stream, and who was it? Anyway, he said his sister works in a house of I forgot the word, ill repute, named Fata Morgana, something like that. Oh my goodness, I forgot. So I'm sorry I forgot. It was Daniel Pratt's water heater said that super chat. Daniel Pratt's water heater. Good on you. That's a tough thing. All right. Thank you to my channel members, to my patrons, and to everybody that supports. And if all you do is watch it, super. If all you do is share it somewhere on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or MySpace, that's awesome. NA says I hated every second of this. Thank you very much. Oh. Yeah, Manabrat said, review Hip Hop Hippie on FDFE's debate with him. All he said was, there is no curve, no argument of anything. So, all right, that's that. I'm going to get out of here. Let me see. I got my outro video coming, and we'll catch you all later. Thank you very much.